welcome to Doors and Corners, a sci-fi and fantasy film commentary podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Zach. And every Friday we sit down and watch a science fiction or fantasy film and give our 2 cents on its quality, production, story, and trivia.
We watch the film together, but without sounds or visuals provided to avoid copyright issues. But if you do have access, we encourage you to join us and follow along.
Here, we like to keep things casual, and there may be discussions of spoilers or sensitive materials or language. But we do try and keep things clean and family-friendly. Ultimately, the goal of this podcast is to create the experience of us all sitting down and watching this movie together.
So get ready to hit that play button, because we're about to get started.
Damn doors and corners, I mean, that's where they get you.
Welcome back to Doors and Corners. I'm Brian.
I'm Zach.
And tonight, we get to take a little detour from the MCU to a one-off, but a really beloved one, at least for me, and I'm fairly certain for Zach also. We're going to be watching Serenity, 2005, the wrap-up to the short-lived but excellent sci-fi TV show Firefly.
So in theory, this doesn't have to be a one-off. In theory, we could make this like a part 1 of a 16-part series.
Well, I mean,
15.
If we ever make the jump to doing some TV, of course, I will be all for doing Firefly. But I think people might be waiting a while for that one if it does happen.
Yeah, very much so.
Unfortunately, we are both active working adults who barely get one of these done a week.
Bingo. Sometimes we even do 2 in a week when we have time, just so we're able to cram in Family Fridays.
But
I love it.
yeah, this right off the bat, I would want to say I did not watch Firefly when it aired. I just quickly tell this story and then I'll let you jump in because I think you have even more history with this than I do. I did not watch Firefly when it aired. I was a big fan at the time of a much worse TV show, Dark Angel. It was that 2-season Jessica Alba show that I actually enjoyed. Like, I'll defend it as being like having some merit and having some interesting ideas. And it was a big deal because James Cameron was in television, which
I was going to say, wasn't that James Cameron?
Oh yeah. He
Shindig.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not to derail this thing, but like it's a show that I would actually enjoy talking about someday, but not even close to the same league of memorable quality that Firefly was. But I was mad because in my mind, and there's a little bit of truth to this, because Fox didn't want to have 2 sci-fi shows at the same time, they canceled Dark Angel without giving it a finale to have Firefly come on the next season. And I, at the time, wasn't a big... I had seen a little bit of Buffy, a little bit of Angel, but it wasn't until after... Like, I didn't go back and watch Buffy and Angel until like the mid-2000s when I had another friend tell me, like, you have to watch these. And I went through them and I realized, oh, these are actually really good, despite some rough spots. And so I actually watched this movie with no idea that it had any, no context. Didn't even realize it was part of Firefly. I, at the time, was just like, oh, it's a Nathan Fillion movie. It's sci-fi. It sounds kind of cool. The poster was interesting. The whole, where she's posing with the blood dripping off the axe and knife or whatever she's got. And, yeah, it's
a good poster.
And so when I watched it, like many people that may have, I don't know how many people saw this without seeing Firefly, but anyways, no idea what the heck was going on. I was genuinely confused. And I'm sure we'll get more into how this movie was trying to do 2 things and really couldn't as far as, for fans versus not. But anyways, I saw this movie and I did not watch Firefly until a year or 2 later, until I finally was like, it might have been you or one of the people that was like, you need to give this show a chance, especially because I love Westerns. It was like, dude, you love Westerns. You need to watch this show. And I think I picked it up for like $20 on DVD and just binged the whole thing over a weekend and was like, nope, this is amazing. And I'm sorry that I didn't see it sooner. So that is my very brief history with Firefly and this film.
My history is similar ish, but also like I don't have the timetables exact. But essentially, I distinctly remember seeing the previews for this movie and being like, that looks really cool. I want to see that. It looks kind of funny. I very, very distinctly remember this one particular scene of Mal and Jane that's in this, where it's just like, do you want to fly this ship? And he's like, yes. He's like, well, you can't, like he didn't expect him to actually answer that. And I thought that it looked funny. It looked good. I thought that it was going to be kind of one of those more adult sci-fi movies that are out there, kind of a hard R type of thing. But you also have to take into account that I was 14 when this movie came out, and so I was kind of trying to branch out and watch some things that maybe my parents wouldn't want me to. And shortly thereafter, I started finding the whole free movies online through like the DivX video player that took forever to buffer. I'd open it and have it buffering all night long. I would turn on the screensaver, but turn off the computer sleep mode so that way it would be there. Yada, yada, yada.
Wow. That's memories right there.
And so I thought that it was going to be like this hyper-violent, semi-sexual thing. I literally didn't know anything about it. This was before my movie phase, all this stuff. And then I watched it and went, this is fun. And I'm like, I didn't know it was related to a TV show at all. I didn't know anything about that. And I just thought that, this is a cool movie. I like it. Don't totally understand what's going on, but, that's just sci-fi sometimes, because there were a lot of those sci-fi movies around that time of just being kind of esoteric and by themselves. And so I watched it and I thought it was cool. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then I was reminded of it by a buddy of mine whose name is also Zach. And Zach was just like, oh, yeah, I loved that movie. I'm like, I remember liking it. It was okay. He's like, well, I mean, I thought it was a pretty good end of the show. And I'm like, what show? He went, what do you mean, what show? And I'm like, there's a show? And he's like, it's the continuation of a TV show. I'm like, I didn't know that. I don't even remember seeing anything on Firefly from when I was young. Nothing. And essentially he was just like, here, and he gives me the DVDs. And I'm like, hey, Mom, my friend gave me these. He says that they're okay because we needed to make sure that they weren't like a dirty show or something like that. Is it okay if I watch some? She's just like, okay. And so I put on the thing, and my mom loved it. There was even a time when my mom would watch through Firefly like once a year. She just absolutely loved it. And I'm sitting here, and I absolutely love it. And I'm like, this is fantastic. And I fell into that kind of the cult of, how did they cancel this? And for those of you who might not know, Firefly was canceled after only 14 episodes due to really crappy mismanagement by Fox in how they were doing their TV shows. It shouldn't have been canceled. It was a really crummy thing that they did, but whatever, right? So, canceled after 14 episodes, but it got a huge fan following. They called themselves the Browncoats, and enough that they were able to finance this film. And I didn't know anything about this, but I was firmly in I am a Browncoat camp for several years, and I still do have a intense love and fondness for the show. But at the same time, having watched others of Joss Whedon's properties since then, I'm kind of like, you know what? I think I'm okay that it got canceled and is in a legendary status, then became a sci-fi show that started good and became mediocre. So,
yeah,
I'm kind of in that camp.
Yeah, I have several kids. At the time of recording, 2018 and 16, and they all love sci-fi, which I'm super happy about. But my youngest, who's the one who still lives with me, we go through TV shows constantly, and almost all of them are sci-fi. We're currently going through Stargate SG-1, which is freaking awesome. But we took a detour because one of my other kids was visiting, and we were like, we should, instead of jumping, showing a random episode in the middle of SG-1, I want to show you guys a pilot. And because I've been wanting them to show them Firefly at one point, I just never gotten around to it. And so we watched the pilot. They all enjoyed it. And 2 days later, my daughter Ashlyn was like, "Hey, Dad, you said that show is pretty short, right? Only 14 episodes?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's unfortunately it only lasted half a season." And she's like, well, could we take a break from SG1 and do that show? Because I really liked that pilot. And of course, just warmed my heart. It's like, oh, yeah. I said, let's go ahead and do that. So I just a few months ago went through the entire Firefly show with my daughter. And then we watched Serenity at the end of it. So it was, my kids have not seen any other Joss Whedon shows. That was the first one for them. And so it was just, I do really enjoy this show. My whole point there was just that I wish the show had gone on longer, obviously, like I think most people, but it's also special that it kind of remains in this almost perfect state. It never got a chance to really go off the rails and potentially go bad. And I think a lot of Joss Whedon shows actually get stronger later, in seasons. I mean, this is the first season of Buffy's rough.
It's true. They do all have their ups and downs.
Yeah, but this one was like, it really culminated, I think, Joss's, and we'll talk about Joss more as this podcast goes on, but his strength as a writer of building ensembles, coupled with just a phenomenal cast. It was magic in a bottle. I mean, and I will, there's a couple celebrities that I will just gush over with any qualms, and one of them is Nathan Fillion. The guy is just, he's so much fun. He's got so much charisma.
Oh, he's great.
I mean, I remember seeing him at the end of Buffy. It was weird because I'd already seen Firefly and some other stuff, but when he came in as like a villain in season 7 of Buffy, it was like, oh, this is like young Nathan Fillion playing like this creepy preacher dude who's like, wants to murder people. That's an interesting role for him. Thinking of him as being young.
You have no idea.
Was it Caleb, I think was his character's name?
Yes.
Yeah.
His name was Caleb.
And I to this day, I have watched just about everything Nathan Fillion's done. And of course, love his voice work also in numerous video games. But yeah, it's the fact that it was so short makes it special. And if it came back, I at this point, I don't think you could ever recapture the magic of this show again. And as much as, it would be cool, I honestly am perfectly content to let this just be what it is at this point.
Mm-hmm. I remember him. I'm also a huge fan of Nathan Fillion. I'm one of these people who's been like, Nathan Fillion should be playing Hal Jordan Green Lantern, who he's done the voice for several times. Role went to Ryan Reynolds. He should be doing Nathan Drake, from the Uncharted series, but they were like, no, he's too old. He did a fan film that's better than the film put out by Tom Holland in the lead role. And I remember the first time I ever saw him, because for years my mother only referred to him as the butt with hair.
What? Okay, I gotta know the story behind that.
The reason why is because of a movie that we loved growing up, which is one of those movies that I'm just like, my mom let us watch this, called Blast from the Past, starring Brendan Fraser and Alicia Silverstone and Christopher Walken. That is about a guy who's this super genius who's built a bomb shelter in his backyard in the 60s, and he thinks a nuclear war is coming.
Christopher Walken.
And essentially, long story short, he has a son down there, and the son lives in this bunker for 35 years, and when it finally opens up, the son gets to go out, having been raised on 50s values in a bomb shelter, goes out into the world to get medicine for his dying father. And he meets a girl, Alicia Silverstone, and there's chemistry. It's a love story, comedy, whatever you want to call it. It's great. Highly recommend. And he's in it as Alicia Silverstone's ex-boyfriend, Cliff. And she's trying to explain to this goody two-shoes guy why she would be with such a dirtbag. And, like, essentially, she's just like, he's shallow, he's awful, he just thinks that I'm just a walking butt and stuff like that. And she's just like, well, why would you ever be with a guy like that? And she's like, because I'm shallow too. Because Cliff is just a butt with hair. A walking butt with hair. And we thought that was the funniest line. And when he's referenced again later, Brendan Fraser was like, it's the butt with hair. And it's just one of those things that stuck around within the lexicon of our family. Is that was the butt with hair. And so when my mom saw the show, she's just like, oh, the butt with hair. And she ended up loving the show so much that she loved Nathan Fillion, would watch anything with Nathan Fillion in it, including the show Castle, which led to her cat being named Castle.
Really? I didn't realize your cat. Okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
I have seen all of Castle. It had some good moments because I'm also a fan of police shows. And then has she been watching Rookie? I'm just curious.
I don't know, actually. I
Okay.
doubt it, given that, my dad's law enforcement. They tend to stay away from law enforcement shows these days outside of, like, Blue Bloods because they don't like the politics of them for the most part.
It's a mixed bag in that
Um,
show for sure. So,
And so they,
Nick-
they don't like seeing their people insulted. They've got that kind of biasy going.
yeah,
Which is fine.
Yeah.
And anyway, I always love Nathan Fillion. I love his voice work, especially. I love that he's in every Guardians of the Galaxy movie. A lot of people don't realize that he was in the movie Deadpool and Wolverine as one of the Deadpools at the end. Just apparently just an amazing guy, and he makes this movie.
Well, I love the fact that he is totally game to do silly little things. Also, I mean, he and James Gunn, I know, are like personal friends, and that's kind of how a lot of that came about. And I do not know a whole lot about Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, so I'm a little bit curious to see that in the new Superman film coming out summer of 25.
Yes, for those of you who don't know, time of recording, the Superman 2025 film is not out. Nathan Fillion is a role in it of Green Lantern Guy Gardner, not Hal Jordan, as he should have been back in 2011. But Guy Gardner is he's the frat boy of the Green Lanterns.
Okay.
Essentially, Hal Jordan is a mess of a human being. You have Jon Stewart, the black guy who's well known from the Justice League cartoons, who's he's a, what do you call it?
He's
He's
a
a
Marine.
former Marine.
Yeah.
He's very serious. He's a soldier. Then you have Kyle Rayner, who's an artist. He's a graphic designer, so he's more like artistic and stuff. Guy Gardner is a thug. Guy Gardner is he has all kinds of legendary moments, like mooning Superman in outer space, getting his teeth knocked out by Batman when he's mouthing off, stuff like that. That's his type of character. He's a problem, but he's also incredibly gifted in combat and willpower.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
And
that.
Nathan Fillion will be great.
Yeah.
He will fit the role really well, especially in his age now.
Yeah, he's just continued to be fun. Again, I'll just briefly say this about Rookie. The show has its ups and downs. He's great in it consistently. He's one of those actors that just, you can enjoy him in pretty much anything he does. He just listen to interviews where there's a lot of interviews out there with him in it, and he is, you never know. Nobody knows what celebrities are like behind closed doors. But you can find so many instances of both his own example in interviews and other people talking about him that he's genuinely like a good guy, like just a really cool human being. And I it helps because there's plenty of actors that I really enjoy their work and cannot say that about.
Yeah, very, very true. Very, very true.
But we're here to talk about Serenity.
I'm just gushing.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll talk more about Nathan Fillion because his performance in this film and in Firefly in general was phenomenal. But why don't you give us a quick rundown and then we'll get this thing started?
Yes. This movie is, I'm going to go ahead and call it a personal favorite. This thing has helped form who I am in terms of loving sci-fi. My own writing, I write as a hobby. I based a lot of my initial stuff off of the dialogue and interactions and world building found in Serenity and Firefly. It's a very impactful movie for me, while at the same time, it has one of the single greatest movie sins ever, and it brings it down from like a 10 out of 10 to like a 7 out of 10.
Really?
And we'll talk about that in a moment. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But this is Serenity. It came out in 2005. It is rated PG-13. It is 1 hour and 59 minutes long, directed by Joss Whedon, written by Joss Whedon, and it stars Nathan Fillion, Gina Torres, Alan Tudyk, Morena Baccarin, Adam Baldwin, Jewel State, Sean Mayer, Summer Glau, Ron Glass. I had to mention them because they are all the original cast members and deserve it. And they are joined by a gentleman. I apologize if I massacre his name. Chiwetel Ejiofor, who is one of my favorite actors of. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. For a while, I referred to him as impronounceable black man. Maybe that's slightly racist. I don't think so. I just did not know how to say that name, and I went and watched a YouTube video to figure out how to pronounce it.
He's great, and he's great in this film.
Love it. So underused in the Doctor Strange movies, it's a crime.
Yeah.
Or I should say Doctor Strange 2 and the rest of the MCU as a whole.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get this started, and we'll have a lot more to talk about as we watch.
It should also be noted that this stars a young and unknown Sarah Paulson. For those who are unfamiliar,
that's right. She's the hologram.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she's not a hologram. She's in the movie only as a hologram, but she's a real person.
Mm-hmm. This was pretty early in her career, and yeah, just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, the only other actor I know that does have a little bit of known is the guy who plays Mr. Universe. He was in 10 Things I Hate About You. I think he was in a couple TV shows.
Most people know him from the Santa Claus.
Oh, that's right. He's the elf.
Jan Feldman. Oh, no, that's the wrong guy. His name's not Jan Feldman. His name is something completely different, and I'm looking at the wrong person. Where are you? David Krumholtz.
Yeah, he's actually a pretty fun actor also, but yeah, he's had a few memorable roles in his career. And again, in the small role in this, I think he was pretty good.
Yeah, I remember him very clearly. I still quote him from time to time. And most people remember him from the crime procedural Numbers, which lasted for like 6 seasons. He was a mathematician who solved crimes with math. Yep. But most other people know him as the elf from the Santa Claus.
All right.
I love it.
We're going to get this started. As usual, we encourage you to watch this with us. It'll hopefully give some extra context to the random things that we will say as we're watching this movie together.
Yes.
We're going to hit that play button in 3, 2, 1, go.
Bye. So a funny thing about this movie to me is that it actually has a whole bunch of actors in it, or not a whole bunch, but several actors that I genuinely don't really care for in almost any other role, but I love them in this. Like Morena Baccarin, Jewel State, Sean Mayer, and Summer Glau. I don't really care for them, like at all, in other things that I've seen them in. Summer Glau is too like overly sexy, breathy. Jewel State, like people just seem to love her, and she's just kind of okay. Morena Baccarin, again, she always plays the like sexy character. And
yeah,
it's just weird.
Yeah, Summer Glau, I'm whatever about. I mean, I think the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Sarah Chronicle Corners.
That she actually, I mean, I think that show was good, but I think that it was good for other reasons besides her. And it's funny too. Right here, this the teacher in this opening. Another actress who very small role in this, and then was huge in the show Bones for years and years and years.
She's also in the show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She had a recurring role on that. Lots of voice work. And she was on one of the Law and Order shows that didn't last very long.
But the I was gonna say Jewel State, I enjoyed her when she came into Stargate Atlantis. Other than that, I have not really seen her in anything outside of this. So,
yeah, I get that.
But yeah,
here we have the first use of Chinese or Mandarin, I should say. This show and movie uses Mandarin throughout the dialogue because they wanted to create a future that was very multicultural in that way, and that everybody kind of had a mixed vocabulary.
And it
really
definitely
awkward voiceover here.
Yeah, it definitely was fun though in the show when the. I mean, it was also that fun way for characters to be able to swear on network television back in 2000. Was it 2 or 3 when Firefly was on the air?
2002.
2002.
Yeah,
That was
but
a
this
good
movie,
transition,
man, does
by
it
the way.
open as a bang.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they do the little bit of exposition there with the terraforming and explaining how everything works within the universe without being too much. It fits. They use it for the context. The young actress that they had looked a lot like Summer Glau, but her voice just wasn't quite right. So Summer Glau dubbed her. It doesn't look very good. I even remember that as a kid going, that's strange. But yeah, it was solid. I really liked the opening. I thought that it was very good, very jarring. All the dialogue here is important and it's tight. And yeah,
Go ahead.
Oh, it's just, if you know the show, this is fantastic. If you don't know the show, it's still really interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's I was going to use this as an intro because I actually want to talk about the long tracking shot we get after this, which is just a fantastic introduction to the Serenity. But this movie, I know that Joss Whedon has talked about this in interviews, and I've heard it in other retrospectives and stuff. This really did have a weird. You're writing this film, do you write it to just be there for the fans of the show to kind of wrap things up, and just assume, write it with the assumption people have seen the show, or do you make it very much more accessible to new audiences? You're trying to make it very friendly and accessible. And, he was trying to go for a middle ground. And ultimately, I think the movie becomes much more usable and enjoyable if you were a fan of the show and knew it all. But you and I both saw it before we saw the show. And it's definitely fun. But this movie gets so much more. You get so much more out of this show if you've already seen. I'm interchanging the show and the movie. I'm sorry about that. You get so much more out of this movie if you've seen the show. The movie is substantially better, in my opinion, if you already come into it knowing and loving these characters.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't envy the writing there, because that's a hard balance to strike.
That little sci-fi weapon that he used that knocked everybody out, funny story, but he reuses that as actually a direct reference to this movie, or at least his brother, who was more involved in the production, in the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Interesting.
That same little, bouncy ball that hits everybody's head with a shockwave. I always liked this scene because I really liked the lasers and how the grid turns, which would kind of make sense, so that way nobody would be able to go down or up.
Yeah, you're not creating a nice
and avoid it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, although a cool transition here. Yeah,
great transition. This whole scene, I adore this scene because this is what takes. Because some people will argue that Firefly's just a Western. This whole scene for me takes Serenity and makes it into a sci-fi, because it introduces this absolutely fantastic concept. But it sets up this villain as dangerous and interesting. I love this villain. He's so calm. He's not even a villain. He's an antagonist.
Yeah.
He's so calm. He's calculating. He's not insane. He's terrifying.
Well,
and part of that's the actor.
Yeah, the actor does a fantastic job. I love the I forget the exact scene. I know it's later in the film where he talks about being that he knows he's a monster. He knows he can't be part of what he's trying to turn the world into. And it's just one of those things that just doesn't get said out loud by antagonists very often. And like you said, just that performance of just that cold, calculating ruthlessness. There's also something about using a very primitive weapon in a sci-fi setting that it's just inherently kind of cool.
Yeah.
The way that you immediately believe he's a very intelligent, very calculating person, and he doesn't have to ever tell you. It's always annoying when the writer feels like the character needs to spell out to other people that they're good at their thing.
They have the character of Shepard Book to do that next.
They do have a little bit of that, but it's annoying when the character tells you. It's much better to show it. And you can have little bits of things here and there from other characters. And actually, I liked in the show, because it wasn't just about Shepherd Book telling the audience, it was also the fact that Shepherd Book gave you interesting little kernels into his past, which was kind of interesting.
Yes.
Like, why would he know?
Right there, okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
That moment right there is what did it for me. Watching this, even the first time, I went, oh, that's interesting. That entire thing, where it's just like, key members of Parliament, these incredibly powerful people with all the secrets, and you put them in a room with a psychic.
Yeah.
Whatever secrets she might have accidentally gleaned, it's probable that she doesn't even know she knows them, that they're buried beneath layers of psychosis.
Yeah.
Like, that as a plot hook is so good to me.
And it also 100% makes complete sense that a very tyrannical government would go to these links. I mean, just the world that very efficient. I love that. Sorry. Just that the only one movement for each.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think about the whole nerve thing? I'm just curious.
I hate it.
Because it's completely made up. That's not a thing in human beings.
And it is the source of my complaint. It is the source of the sin of this movie.
How the final...
Joss Whedon
Go ahead.
repeats in the Avengers.
Yeah, he does it with Hulk, right?
No, not with Hulk. Actually related to the character of Eric Selvig and the barrier surrounding the generator keeping the portal open. Joss Whedon uses Deus Ex Machinas. However, Avengers has a deleted scene that clears it up. So there might be a deleted scene which creates the proper Chekhov's gun for the ending of this movie to make sense. But at the end, spoilers, Malcolm Reynolds is hit by his little, lower back Vulcan nerve pinch. But it doesn't work on him. He pretends and he fakes him out because he got hit by some shrapnel and had that nerve cluster moved. And nowhere else in the movie does it mention him having any type of...
It's very convenient.
Scar. It's very convenient. And they needed lead up. They needed something earlier in the movie. And it is this overlooked piece of writing that just brings this movie down. This is the example of a Deus Ex Machina in a movie that I use.
Yeah.
It is so prominent.
And you're not wrong for sure. It's so okay. I really quickly, let's transition to this opening sequence. We got a long, obviously with some CG help here, this long tracking shot from the exterior of the Serenity, where you're being introduced to the ship. This pan around the front window, and then here's our captain. I'm such a
music.
Yeah, I'm such a sucker for a good tracking shot.
And me too. I love them. And this is a true tracking shot. This isn't a oneer, okay? Like you have the tracking shot around the ship. That's a oneer because it involves moving between differently rendered scenes.
Yeah.
This right here, though, starting with the jump into the cockpit, this is a tracking shot throughout the set that they built entirely of the inside of the ship that introduces each one of the main players one by one.
Yeah. And I mean, it introduces them with giving you a bit of just their personality and their role also, which it's just, again, it's because people who haven't seen the show, they need to know who these characters are. And this one sequence gives you just a little bit into everybody. He's carrying, Jane's carrying his guns.
He also delivers that thing where you get this distinct feel from him that he's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
But he's also competent.
Right
childish.
there. Yeah. Letting you know that Zoe and that they're married. I love the line of what you plan and what happens ain't always the same thing, which is just a great line.
Yeah. Ain't exactly been similar.
Yeah.
But no, I absolutely love that one also. I love Wash's line. I still use it. The define interesting. Oh God, we're all gonna die.
Yeah. Letting you know, Kaylee, obviously the mechanic here, and the immediately also letting you know that doesn't really take care of his ship as well as he should.
But he's trying. And then you have this guy just stone cold.
Yeah. The only thing that's interesting here is this is the one character, and I'm not like Simon's a good character, but you're getting him way more confident in this movie than he was in the show.
He's the biggest change from the TV show, and I've had that pointed out by a lot of people. He was this in the show. He's like he doesn't know anything about how the real world works. He's this stuck-up doctor who was played by a very young and unknown Zac Efron during a flashback, and he was never sure of himself. In this one, you see the insecurities, you see the doubts, but he's very sure of himself through most of it.
Well, and especially in this intro, like the way he stands up to Malcolm is, I mean, I think he might have had one or two close things like this in the show, but and I mean, if you watch the show, you could see how he would get to this point, but it is definitely the biggest jump in character type.
They kind of alienate him from the rest of the crew when even in those first 14 episodes of the original, they had moved it to where he is much more a part of the crew. He's part of the family, and in this one, he feels much more disconnected from the found family.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to talk about just Mal a little bit too. I really consider him one of the best written characters in the genre, mostly because he walks the line so well between heartfelt and kind of cold, and you know, somebody who is absolutely fine just shooting a guy who's standing in his way, and deeply cares about people who are close to him. He's not a hero archetype in the traditional sense. I mean, you know, he has qualities for sure, but I just, you know, and part of this is I'm highly biased to Nathan Fillion. I'll gladly admit that, but I really think he is a delicate balancing act of a character and done really, really well. I'm curious what you think of him as just a character from a writing point of view.
Oh, I love him as a character because he has legitimate character growth. The show does really well at making him a consistent character. A lot of it is just the performance by Nathan Fillion. He just does it so dang well. But at so I love it. The when I was younger and had a little bit more staunch ideals, partially because my bloodline is very much from the Union side of the Civil War, and this show was written inspired by a book that actually I used to have, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Firefly was inspired by a book that was about Southern soldiers after the Civil War trying to find new life, trying to find something in the West and their place in the world after they feel that they've been defeated by a tyrant. So I love that. And these days, but back then I didn't, so I had a little bit of a crust against him because he's supposed to represent one of those graycoats. He's a Confederate. And but these days I love him to death, and I would put him up there as one of the best captains in sci-fi. And he's kind of a Han Solo Captain Kirk mashup to me. He's got that roguishness, but he's got that love for his crew and his people and his tactical, responsible leadership. Love him.
That line right there, it's just a great example of his character. The whole, you know, if something happens, I promise I'll get real choked up. There might even be tears. Because he does care, but he also, you know, gotta put on a little bit of a show. But it's not entirely
he will never say
a
that
show.
He cares.
It's a good. And again, I think he's the kind of character. If you got the wrong actor to play him, it would just not work at all. You need somebody who can walk that balance.
Yes, and he very much is. My mom says that I'll communicate like Malcolm Reynolds sometimes. I have trouble expressing emotion sometimes, so I'll be sarcastic about it, much like he is. Like he genuinely cares about River, and he'll protect her no matter what. But he's also kind of a douche about it.
Yeah.
Be bad guys.
Oh man, I really also I mean, I know that's such a weird stunt. Just the way the guy like went rigid and his head slammed into the ground. Anyways, I also love Jane. I think Adam Baldwin is one of those actors who, not as prominent as Nathan Fillion, but is also really good at doing the roles he does. I liked him very much in
think
Chuck.
you'd be surprised. I was gonna say there's a lot of people. Chuck was very popular,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people who remember him from Chuck. And a weirdly large amount of people who remember him as a random Secret Service agent in charge of Area 51 from Independence Day.
Well, he wasn't in the Secret Service. He was in the Air Force. He was a major.
Oh, that okay.
But yes, he was Independence Day. I thought for the longest time he was a Baldwin brother too. I didn't realize he had no relation until later.
No,
in life.
he's not a Baldwin brother.
Yeah, but
I loved him. He's the reason I watched the show The Last Ship, and that was a very disappointing show.
Yeah. After that first season, it was not great. But this, I again, they're showing you so much about the show. They're going to introduce you to Reavers here. They're introducing you to just there's the psychic ability of River, and at the same time the crew interactions, even little stuff like the way that she looks over at Zoe, and kind of a little head nod with like, yeah, I mean it. Just there's all the nuances of performance and writing are just fun.
And also that little line there about the hero thing, that's foreshadowing. That's writing. These guys aren't the heroes.
No.
But in a way they will be, and people die.
I like sarcasm, and I like movies that don't try to be overly clever with their sarcasm. They just go with it. Because most people who are sarcastic don't try to hide it or be uber clever with it. They just do it. And Zoe is a great sarcastic character.
Oh, so much. I think overly dry sarcasm is actually like a huge problem in shows.
Jane. Just he just just the look. Fire a couple rounds down. Never mind. You can come down.
Mm-hmm. Also, he's going first. He knows that there's a guy who's armed. He goes first. He doesn't send somebody ahead.
Yeah.
It kind of shows his character in that way. Now, one of the things I like about this movie that corrected from the show is the gunfire. Do you remember the gunfire in the show?
It was a little weak.
It wasn't just weak. It sounded like a laser blast. It had like a zing to it.
Yeah,
and there was a little bit of it in that submachine gun there, which I think was just an MP5. But they do just enough to make it sound realistic that I'm like, yes.
This whole conversation too, the whole figure out how to let this guy not take the blame for not really resisting too hard.
Mm-hmm. But it's so good.
Yeah.
I love this whole movie.
Yeah.
But this is the type of scene. Just the opening 15 minutes of this movie. 20 minutes now. Wow, the opening 25 minutes of this movie are so good. And his performance from serious to sarcastic to lighthearted, even over that first tracking shot to all this, he's funny, he's being cool, just he's so serious ever since the word Reaver came out. Is so good.
And this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Just
bang.
Yeah. Spare him.
Yeah.
And again, it's just, I think, Reynolds he's quippy and funny, but he's also very heartfelt. He's also hard and cold when he needs. It's just, he walks that line, and he goes back and forth
in the protection of his family.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I do enjoy the massive smoke coming off of anything the Reavers are piloting.
Mm-hmm. So that gun of his is actually really interesting. It's not a real gun in any way.
No.
I believe that it's something like it has some really long, complicated name that's like let me look at it here. Moses Brothers Self-Defense Engine Frontier Model B. In reality, it's just a simple Taurus Model 85, which is like the snub-nose pistol you think of in any noir. Or the upgraded version of that. It's just your basic short pistol, and they just put a longer barrel on it and put a whole bunch of greeblies to make it look all steampunk and sci-fi. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This action scene is also a really interesting mixture of like funny but also serious. Now this is one of the few action beats in this movie that I don't hate, but right here, just the through his leg, the fact that he's still holding on, that this thing hasn't ripped the flesh right out of his leg. It's just, you would have to have these two vehicles so perfectly speed matched to not immediately rip his leg off here.
Yeah.
It's by no means an egregious sin. Movies are guilty of crazy stuff all the time. But it always bugged me a little bit.
I'm with you. I always thought the same thing. And I personally believe that it was entirely to set up that scene of Mal like recoiling and having that perfect shot. It's just such a hero moment.
Oh, yeah.
But this scene also does really well. Not even just the action performance, but just kind of the general reaction to the Reavers that they have does really well of setting them up because they're such an important part of this movie.
Yeah.
This action sequence isn't just for the sake of action; like it has a purpose. And I love that.
Yeah. Well, and the introduction. I mean, you see the Reavers very briefly, out on the street, and grabbing civilians and stuff. But the reaction from the main characters to the Reavers does more to tell you about them than the Reavers' actual actions do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Some people get mad because they kind of change the Reavers in this versus what they were in the show, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I like it.
A tiny bit, but...
I think it's a great twist.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I've read that I'm like, I get it, but almost every sci-fi is guilty of some version of this, so it's not the end of the world. Which is, the Reavers are both like, mindless, crazy, but also like still fly ships and somehow, function as some kind of quasi weird society.
Battle frenzy.
Yeah, I mean,
don't eat your own type of thing. Because the idea is that they are somewhat of a different species genetically.
Almost. Yeah, and like I said, it's not by any means some kind of breaker thing for me. It's just I love the hello there from Walsh. Yeah, so as much as we gush over Nathan Fillion, and I'm happy to do so, Alan Tudyk is also just a gem.
I was literally going to say a gem. Alan Tudyk is a national treasure of Canada. God, I love him so much. Everybody who is listening to this has heard Alan Tudyk in one way or another.
Oh, yeah.
He has been voices in some of the biggest movies. He's either appeared in or been voices in some of the biggest movies of the last 15 years. He's K2SO in Rogue One. He's the Duke of Wesselton from Frozen, and thus the Duke of Weaseltown from Zootopia.
Yeah. Isn't he
Hey the chicken?
Yeah, isn't he referred to as like Disney's good luck charm these days?
I've heard stuff like that before, and he's on a show called Resident Alien, where he plays an alien hiding on Earth that I didn't really latch onto myself, but there was no denying it was very well done.
Yeah, I've seen the first season of it, and he's great in it.
Yeah.
I also, what's interesting. This reminds me a little bit of. I'll make a Star Trek comparison here. I remember when I saw Generations, seeing the Enterprise and the crew lit and performed in a movie setting versus the show. And everything got darker, and the lighting got more dynamic, and you could just tell that there was more time and money to put into it than what you get when you're doing an hour-long episodic show. And just the Serenity is the lighting is so much more dynamic and interesting. You can tell they just had more. They weren't being because I think it was an interview with Summer Glau, not Summer Glau, Jewel State, who was talking about. That the entirety of Firefly was shot in like 5 or 6 months. Like everything you've seen, like it was a quick, fast little thing for them at the time. Like they went really fast on that show, and seeing the show, the Serenity of the ship, the way that they're lit, the way that they're filmed, the costumes, all that stuff, with a film budget and a film schedule is kind of fun. It was similar to seeing the Enterprise D for the first time, in a similar light, if that makes sense.
No, I totally understand that. I remember Star Trek Picard, both season 1 with its weird little dream sequence and season 3 when you see the Enterprise D again for the first time. And seeing it like that in that kind of quality for the first time in 25 years was just like, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Because as much as I like Next Gen, it's very much, shot in a very specific way. A lot of, just big lighting. Not, as good as that show is, it's not some kind of an amazing example of, dynamic directing and really, creative use of camera and lighting and angles and stuff like that. It's shot very straightforward, and it's a show that I love very, very much. But it is cool when you get to see things with a little more time and energy put into them.
Yes.
And money. and more money, which is a big part of it also.
Yeah. We have the first reference to Shepherd Book. At least I think it's the first. There might have been another
in this film. It is, yeah.
There are 2 other cast members from the TV show that haven't yet appeared in the movie here, which is Shepherd Book and Inara. And for the fans of the show, they're just like, where are they? And here you have the reference to both of them.
Yep. Yeah.
Just like Inara. And you get to see his longing. I personally believe that the intention for Firefly was to have every possible romantic relationship that you can think of, like TV show trope, all in one, so that you could kind of dissect them, explore them, use the different things between them, and it could kind of have those dynamics. You have the brand new fledgling flirty courtship, nervous relationship crushes with Simon and Kaylee. You have the stable married relationship between Wash and Zoe. And then you have the will they, won't they, tense denial of self. They wish they could, but they can't, of Inara and Mal.
Yeah.
And I always kind of love that.
Yeah. I do love, we got the nod to Jane's hat in this he's wearing.
That's right.
His knit cap, which was it your mom or was it one of your sisters who actually gave me, who made a Jane's hat for me and gave it to me for my birthday years ago?
That was my mother.
Okay. It's great.
That was my mother. She made you that Jane's hat.
I do still have that.
Stunning, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. This whole sequence too, just the Kaylee's little bits of just engineering coming out, she is very opinionated about ships and everything. It's delivered well also. It's just fun there.
Yeah. Her backstory she's not given much backstory. She doesn't get a lot explored, but how she got on the crew is really funny.
Oh, that was a funny episode. That flashback.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a funny episode, but that was a funny part. Essentially, the idiot engineer that they had hired was this like bro dude, and essentially he was hooking up with Kaylee in the engine room, and they walk in and he's just like, don't worry about it, man. He's like, we're worrying about it, man. And she's the one who fixes it, so he kicks out the guy and hires her instead.
Yeah. Okay, I just watched it. What was that flashback in the middle? Was that the one where Mal was like almost like dying on the ship the whole time, or is it that one?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, he's walking through the ship. He's literally dying from oxygen deprivation, trying to fix it, and you get the flashback for how each of the characters came onto the ship.
Show. That's right. Mm-hmm. What was that? The name of that?
How he found the ship.
Yeah, the name of the episode was what, like Full Stop or Adrift or something like that. Yeah, but it was a good episode.
Adrift. It sounds like Adrift.
Yeah. Oh, there's a famous line.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I remember. You know Vic, our good friend
Vic.
Yes. I watched this with him because he watched Firefly and he liked it, and I watched it with Dan and stuff. But Vic heard that line and he was like, "What did she just?" Oh, because he doesn't tolerate anything even close to that, and he just got so.
Well, and it's so funny too because Kaylee is this like comes across as, so sweet and everything, but then she's also kind of in a way the most openly sexual out of the crew also. And
she's also very perverted. She
Yeah.
makes lots of perverted comments. She is a genuinely horny character.
Yeah.
Like, always. No, it's great.
Yeah.
This is very par for the course. They would always do lots of business in the TV show and everything. This is their whole thing. These are their Jabba the Hutts,
Yeah. Well, I love the little detail that they've been in this bar before, the girl with the fans, making sure to protect them from security cameras. I mean, just, the idea that this is a very established world. These are old relationships. These people know each other. I mean, in that, not that they're friends, but there's an established world and routine behind this whole life that is very deeply entrenched, which gives it a feeling of just realism, not like in it's all realistic, but you could believe this is a real place with real people. And I always love that.
I don't know if it's happened yet, but there is a news story that plays here referencing the Reaver attack at the beginning and how a bunch of the civilians survived by locking themselves in a bank vault.
That is, it's may have already happened, but I do remember that. It's kind of in the background.
Go
ahead.
This scene coming up here is so weird. The Fruity Odie bar.
Yeah. Not mandatory.
On the DVD, they actually have the making of the Fruity Odie bar commercial, and you could just watch the whole thing. It is a trip and a half, man. They went weird for this little commercial, and I love it.
The really soft lighting all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm. Which I realize is a Joss Whedon thing. Those of you who aren't familiar, Joss Whedon is the director of this tiny little movie from 2012 called The Avengers. And this movie is literally the reason why they hired him, because The Avengers was a little bit of a gamble still when they were making it. They weren't sure it was going to be a hit. So they're like, let's get a cheap director who's legendary among nerds and can handle an ensemble cast and good action. And they pointed to Serenity in order to prove that. And I love Jane's little, hey, a tussle. But he likes those transitions with that soft lighting. He does it in all of the Avengers movies at one point or another.
Yeah. I will say, I both enjoy the choreography of Rivers fighting, but there's also she kind of doesn't take hits the way that a human being would.
I would go ahead. I've noticed that also, and I thought that it was kind of weird, but over time, I go to venture that the whole thing here is that she's supposed to be a weapon, right? That's why they were making her. And so she would have been programmed in her psychological inundating, whatever it's called. I can't think of the word. Brainwashing, I guess.
Yeah.
That she is programmed to ignore pain.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I mean that scene we just had with River and Jane, where it's not that she just hits him in the nuts, she just grabs and holds on, and I'm like, that's so bad. Like, just the idea of not just getting an impact, but like a sustained pressure is it's
the worst.
It's rough.
Yeah, it's not a nice time.
No.
Which is apparently some sort of dialect of Russian saying something along the lines of "this is for chickens to sneeze at."
Okay.
It's supposed to be just a nonsense phrase. Which, it really is a nonsense phrase. The action, though, was really good.
Yeah.
They used her skills as a dancer, her natural skills as a dancer.
Yeah.
And I think that they used it to very good effect.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that this movie did not fall under because this is very much in the, Jason Bourne shaky cam is starting to become a thing, and that they let the action play out in a little bit longer, shots, not, trying to cheat with the camera, and I appreciate that because I kind of hate that style of action. So
yeah, same. In fact, I think that was something that he specifically went out of his way to avoid because he didn't like it.
Yeah, there's like
it's also kind of weird to me.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
That the action is so good in this movie in that way, but actually the fist fist to fist. The hand-to-hand duelish combat in the first Avengers movie is great.
No. Well, you have the combination there of it not being good, and then when we saw Winter Soldier, we were like, oh, Captain can be that cool in how he fights. And it was just so, it immediately made him seem so vanilla and I love Captain America. We'll get there eventually, but yeah, I think the combination of it being weak and then the follow-up being so good did not do any favors for that film's hand-to-hand action sequence.
I just think about it a lot because it's obvious that Joss Whedon can put together a good fight scene. Even despite the fact that he turned the Justice League movie into a complete and utter abomination in many ways, there is an aspect of it where he did do some good things. And one of the things that he did well was adding some clarified non-slow-mo action.
Yeah.
And like he knows how to do that. But for some reason, the Avengers was just like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, it was... The Avengers, I mean, obviously we'll watch the movie down the road here, but it's a very, very good film. But it's got a few little things that are just like interesting choices. For all the problems with Age of Ultron, for all the problems with Age of Ultron, I do actually think its action was a step up.
Oh my gosh, yes. Age of Ultron gets more flack than it deserves, while still not being the greatest thing in the world, and the bottom third of Marvel movies for sure. But we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah, this whole sequence too. I like films that take the time to kind of, in a character-driven way, examine after a big event. I think so many films, just make the mistake in their writing of wanting to jump kind of right to decisions being made and then getting to the next, big plot beat. And I will give Joss Whedon credit that he lets his characters like breathe, and ask questions that anybody would ask, like, okay, what the heck has just happened? And, state some obvious things that most normal human beings would ask about, like, why was she doing this? What's going on? What should we do next? And you have also the characters being true to their archetypes in how they were reacting to what just happened. And it makes for good character moments. It makes for some funny times also. And it helps the flow of the film, in my opinion.
I know, I completely agree. And I also appreciate, like, one of the things they do in this movie that I realized later that I really liked was that they transition very well in where the places are, I guess you could say. Like, there's a reason that they're suddenly doing something, and they bring it up in conversation, so it makes sense that we're suddenly transitioning somewhere, because it's just like, we need to go to Mr. Universe. So now you know that they're heading somewhere. It gives them a direction. It's not just, oh, we're showing up to a planet.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's great.
And
but this right here is who we were talking about. This gentleman, David Krumholtz, which again, you might recognize as Bernard the Elf from the Santa Claus, but maybe that's just my very limited interactions with him on film.
Yeah, I have a weird attachment where I think of him mostly in 10 Things I Hate About You, because I weirdly like that movie.
I hate about you. I'm trying to remember 10 Things I Hate About You.
It's the high school drama
yes.
based on Taming of the Shrew with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Heath Ledger, Julia Stiles. I mean, a stacked cast.
My ex-wife made me watch it. It was like her favorite movie.
I definitely wouldn't go that far, but I enjoy it very much. Anyways,
I remember finding it very charming. It just wasn't my type.
Yeah, but he's Joseph Gordon-Levitt's best friend. Well, not his best friend, but like his high school bound friend. But
awesome.
I enjoyed too that they tell you so much of Mr. Universe just from, again, his I'm using air quotes here behind a microphone, his girlfriend, and
including that he's, as always, still Jewish.
Yep. the whole finding the subliminal messaging in the advertisements and all that. It's just, yeah. I also love the fact that there's just a little bit of Big Brother, which of course that would be happening. I think he doesn't, it's like there might be some cliches about, well, this is how, big government organizations and shadowy but it's like that's also true. Like that's how it would actually be going down in this scenario.
Yeah.
Oh
Heck, it's
gosh.
true of how it actually is in some ways.
Yeah.
But I will turn my conspiracy theorist off. I love conspiracy theories, by the way. I don't necessarily believe very many. There's a couple, like I believe Marilyn Monroe was murdered by the Kennedys, but I just like them. I collect them in like a little box of conspiracy theories to go, did you know that there's a theory without actually committing to any? Because a lot of them are really outlandish and we'll never actually know.
No, it's part of a good conspiracy theory. It's impossible to prove.
Yeah. I just don't like it when people are absolutists about them.
Yeah. I also do their relationship as brother and sister. I did always like, and I like Simon much more than River as a character. I find him much more interesting. I think River is a cool genre character in that, you get she can fight and she's got a mystery and what's really going on in her brain. But I always appreciated Simon's honesty with her, his genuine care for her, the fact that I never doubted that he loved her with all of his heart back in the show. And I'm glad that they give a little bit of time to that relationship in this film as well, in this scene right here.
Well, I know that the two of them actually did bond on set as like brother and sister. They developed a very close friendship, and it's one of the reasons why the two of them just work so good together. Also, there's this thing here when he said Miranda. I had this theory watching it the first time. I very distinct memory of this, where I'm like, are they doing like a alternate personality thing? Because that was big at the time. Was like schizophrenia. Schizophrenia portrayed as dissociative identity disorder, DID.
No.
And I'm just like, Miranda's going to be her other personality. And he has that moment of, am I talking to Miranda now? And they immediately cut it off. And I'm so glad, because they could have done that so easy.
Now, we did just talk about interesting, like well done transitions. I will say that quick jump to, Inara and the antagonist. I forget his character's name.
The operative.
But just this quick, like, oh, there she is, and here he is. No dialogue, and then immediately jump back to the crew. I mean, it's effective in that just you're progressing things along, but it is quite abrupt all of a sudden.
I remember thinking that it is quite clunky. I think that it was put in there because they needed to have that moment of reminding you that the villain is still out there.
Yeah. Well, we had gone 40 minutes at this point without seeing him again. So, yeah, I mean, he was in danger of getting lost.
Yeah, because you need him so much at this point, and you need to remember him. You need to remember that he's this operative because of this conversation right here. Here we have the character of Shepard Book, who was one of the characters on Firefly, and also one of my biggest contentions with Firefly, because they make him this, he's a preacher, he's a pastor, and they get all of his theological arguments wrong, because Joss Whedon is a rearing atheist who loves to make spiritual people wise, but also stupid.
Yeah.
He likes to mock religion. But he's so good in this role. Ron Glass passed away about 8 years ago.
Had he done something significant before this? Because I've never really... I mean, I loved him in this show, in this film. He's a great performer, but I don't actually know about his body of work very much.
I'm trying to remember. I remember I'd seen him in a few things, and he had been... I mean, he was in the show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is I've brought up a number of times, because one, I'm watching it right now, and two, it's a Joss Whedon series, for the most part. He was involved in some of the first season, and then he dropped off to go do other things like Ruin Justice League. But Ron Glass, let me see. Yeah. Here to the ears and the eyes of the verse.
I did always like, in the show did it, and this movie does it well. I do think across the board, this movie does a pretty good job of continuing the relationships, the tone of the relationships between the characters. And Book was one of the few guys, like basically Book and Zoe were like the two people in the show who could challenge Mal and do it in a way where he would listen. And I appreciated that they continue that here. I mean, and when I say challenge, Book wouldn't, obviously wouldn't come in and just push Mal around. That wasn't his style, but he would get Mal to think. He would
very
challenge
much of
him.
a
Yeah.
almost mentory without being like, I am your mentor, but there was a respect there. There was a submission almost. So Ron Glass, his big note is he was on almost 200 episodes of the old show Barney Miller that still has quite a following.
Huh. I don't think I've ever seen an episode of that.
Yeah, like Hal Linden, Abe Vigoda.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've never actually seen it.
Yeah, old detective show. He was in like some Perry Mason stuff, and let me see other things. He was a voice in Aladdin. Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know who Quan Sear is in Aladdin, but apparently he was a voice in Aladdin.
Okay.
Oh, that's the TV show, not the movie. Never mind then. Yeah, he just seemed to have been in things.
Yeah. I love it in this sequence here that they the awkwardness between Mal and Inara, but also that the crew is just, without any sense of we shouldn't be watching their conversation. No, they're just watching it. And
yeah.
They both do a good job. Like, this is the most awkward you've seen Nathan Fillion act in this entire film. And he does it well. I also like just the subtle, this is the one shirtless scene you get. And Nathan Fillion's a perfectly in shape guy, but he's normal, but he's also like the scars and just some of it's a little bit of storytelling in just that he's been through some stuff.
Yeah, he's a believable soldier type to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've ever been talking with a girl that you've like an ex or a girl that you were really interested in, it didn't work out.
It's awkward.
There's some relatability there.
Yeah. And I did love just a second earlier in the bridge when they were like throwing popcorn at the screen, like.
Oh yeah.
Although this year too, just again that they all understand. Trap.
Trap. Well, I mean, not all, but Zoe, she's jaded. She's lived it. She gets it.
Yeah. I like his shirt a lot. I don't know why. I just was noticing that. It's just a fun design. Got some cool
it's pretty good.
character
I
to
like
it.
that color too.
Yeah.
Be sure, Inara just don't want to see you.
Sometimes people have feelings.
First referring to people.
Well, and also, Haley always had her own kind of, not necessarily in a sexual way, but definitely had a crush on Inara also. Always just kind of, was enamored by her is a good way to put it, I think.
Yes. But like, you see us fight? No. Trap. It's a nice little thing. It really keys you in as to their relationship, that these are the bickery people.
I love this little exchange. Come rescue me. Oh, it's just fun little Zoe, because actually I think at the very end, I don't want to talk about it yet. Zoe gets some real character moments in the kind of the finale. But other than that, at the end, she doesn't get a whole lot in this film, honestly. But she's still a great character and well acted. Obviously, she's that actress is. Gosh, why am I screwing up her name in my head right now?
Oh, the actress for Zoe?
Gina Torres, right?
Yeah, Gina Torres.
Yeah. She's great, but this whole sequence though, when he shows up in the robe and everything, and I didn't think you'd be stupid enough to actually fall for it. This confrontation I love because Mal is a capable guy for sure, but this whole sequence, just their interactions. The way that Mal acts, the way that he acts, that he doesn't get angry. I almost just want to watch it, but there's so much here this is a good action scene.
Yeah, and not even a good action scene. Like, yes, it's a good action scene, but there's so much more to it than just the action.
Yes,
the character. You're getting really insight into everybody. Like, you have insight into Mal, but you get. I don't know. It's dripping with character, and it's
Yeah.
so well acted.
But that's what makes it a good action scene, because a good action scene, the movie doesn't go on pause to watch some cool fight choreography. A good action scene is just as much of the film, right? And it does progress characters, and it does tell you and inform you, and the story is continuing during the fight choreography and the dialogue in between, the throws and leading up to it and ending it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I love that about this, because not only is the choreography fun, but the characters are being built, during the whole thing, like you were just saying.
Yeah, very much so.
I do enjoy too the dialogue has that constant. It feels just a little bit different, some of the slang, some of the mixture of cultures. It's got a little bit of Western to it, but also just a little like, all right, I have no idea what that means, but I do accept it as being part of their slang, because the way they're saying it is so natural that you just accept it and move on.
Yeah. I always loved that exchange. I was just like, that is a trap. If I offer a bribe, you'll play the man of umbrage. If I appeal to your revenue, you'll play the brigand. I don't know. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Like, you're showcasing just how smart your villain is, your antagonist, just how dangerous he is, just how well he knows his targets, and also keys you into the way that Malcolm would work. I don't know why I called him Malcolm. His name is Mal.
I never credited the Alliance with an overabundance of brains.
I've used similar, the overabundance of, never credited with an overabundance of brains. I've used that in my personal life. I quote this movie so much that if I ever am able to get my wife to watch it, I'm sure that she'll be like, that's where you say that?
I do like the whole, I might be unarmed, but I'm of course not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a moron. Sorry, yeah, that. I like the little bit here too, that Inara is not like a fighter, but she's not like, in the corner, like cowering,
Yeah. She's smart, she's cunning. I love the little Han Solo shot first reference, which is definitely what that is, by the way.
Yeah. That tiny little sweat wipe on his forehead is just good. Like, just that I did exert a little bit of effort.
I just, man, I love.
I just want to watch this
so much.
Yeah,
because he's just so good at all of it.
Love the line, Captain. What do you think is going to happen here? Just that. I'm very in control of this situation, and
that's something that I've passed into my own like writing of antagonists, and it's just like that question of what is it that you think is going to happen here? There's no out for you. There's no way out of this. And then you kind of have to think like, but how can he get out of it? And I love it.
Yeah. Well, and it's, yeah. I also, I appreciate an action scene where, Maul's a brawler, somebody who's his entire, fighting training is just through life experience. So he's capable and he can take a hit. And he does get one, 2 or 3 decent hits in, but he's just so outclassed by somebody, who obviously is incredibly skilled and practiced. Yeah. It's a good balance.
It very much is. And then you have the little that's not incense and
yeah. Also too, just like right there that he's just like, I'm not gonna sit here dazed. Like, no, go get them. Like
yeah. And that comment about the shuttle comes from the TV show because she lived in the shuttle. She's essentially, she's like a geisha. She's a high-class prostitute.
Yep.
And she would take the shuttle and go find rich clients when they were near a decent planet. And it was the source of the contention between her and Mal because Mal loved her, but she was also, a prostitute. A companion, as they're called. And, yeah. Just good stuff.
Yeah.
You're right, that had more action than I remembered, because I honestly didn't think of that when I think of the action sequences in this movie. I mainly think of the end, and I think of the beginning.
Yeah. This is a fantastic description of him also, right here. He's a believer. He genuinely believes he's doing the right thing.
He's a zealot, which is genuinely one of the most dangerous kinds of villains.
Yeah, because you just somebody who's hired, somebody who's just a paid, whether they're a bounty hunter or a soldier, their main motivation is just the check they're getting. That's you can deal with those kind of people in much different ways than somebody who is a fanatical convert to the cause they're fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
Right here. Yeah, there you go.
The relationship between Mal and Jane is so fascinating throughout the show.
Well, especially how they came to be, how Jane came onto the ship. That whole, it's just that Jane's not loyal to Mal, so to speak. I mean, he likes him, and he doesn't, But they established multiple times if he had the right offer, he would. He did actually turn on Mal.
Yeah, and Mal.
That was a good scene.
Back.
Yeah, that was a fantastic sequence with him in the airlock. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
you guys should all go watch Firefly.
You should go watch. that giving that moment to Zoe, I always love that too. Just that close in on her face, just you want to walk out of this room because it's just again it holds on to that shared experience that Mal and Zoe have from the war.
They're soldiers,
yep.
And they have that soldier bond. The relationship between Mal and Zoe is so good, and they actually take an entire episode of the show to establish that there is absolutely nothing romantic between them, and it's a really good episode.
Mm-hmm.
It has one of the most famous lines in the entire thing. I'll be in my bunk. And they take an entire episode to establish that Zoe and Mal are not romantically linked in any way.
No.
They are friends.
Yeah. And there's
much like the characters from a certain video game, Cade Six and Ikora Ray.
Yeah. You spin me about. I love that. I love that line also because that is again. I do think that Mal, much more than Inara, he realistically just anybody who's been heartbroken can relate to what he's saying.
Mm-hmm. So much. And I genuinely thought that when he said there, it took me until I was watching it with subtitles one day when it was really, really quiet. I was watching it late at night. I didn't want to wake anybody up, so I turned on the subtitles. That he said, "You fog things up."
Mm.
I thought that he said the F word. I thought he said, "You fuck things up." And I remember telling my mom, "Oh, it has one F word in it." When we watched it, and I was shocked. I'm like, he says fog? That makes so much more sense. I thought that was such a brutal line.
I do.
This scene was always weird to me.
Yeah. Her flashes. I mean, obviously the intro to the film, set up the idea that she doesn't even know what secrets she knows, and this dark secret of the origin of the Reavers. But it is interesting just to kind of go in for just the normal, scary, mind flashes. As kind of a way to communicate that. It's not bad, but I do think it's a little clunky.
Yeah. Drunken Jane, this fits.
Oh yeah.
Him wanting to, because he's had some issues with River in the past anyway.
She slashed him.
Knocked him out more than once, and she smashed his balls earlier.
Well, she slashed him across the chest with a knife that one time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He turned her in for the bounty, which led to the aforementioned scene where Mal shoved him in an airlock and was just like, "You mess with my people again, you're dead." But oh goodness, and it just makes him such a dummy.
Yeah. Well, and he's also a weird mixture of like very capable, but also like not. I don't know how else to say it. He's a weird balance of, a reliable, gun hand in a way, but definitely not going to be. I love this scene too, where she hits his throat here.
Yeah, 'Cause, you know, it makes sense in that context.
Poor Simon. It's a scary angle.
Yeah.
I also
Well,
love
they
just
do those angles specifically for her
yeah.
to make her bigger. You know,
Yeah,
it's like
she's not a tall woman.
I remember this because I remember there was this blooper reel of all things Firefly and Serenity, and they had like 10 takes of her throwing that ratchet to him, and he kept missing it.
I think I've seen that, but it's been a while. This
Yeah.
this is also just a great piece of editing here when he hits the doorway and you get the gun come up and just the way that it's all kind of stitched together is a really, this is a good energy to it. This is well edited, this whole sequence.
Yes, very much so. I agree.
How close that gun is, the front of the barrel is slightly out of focus. It's just it's effective.
Yep. I remember seeing that the first time and going, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. Not worth, yeah. I like how honest Mal is with River. That he's very straightforward with her, but he also it's one of the gentlest sides to Mal you ever see when he talks to her. So weird choice right there too. That the gun, like everything's moving in that shot when she cocks the hammer back, except the gun is like frozen. You know?
Yeah, it's like they stabilized on the gun.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never quite understood how big the space in this show was, as far as like how is it like part of the galaxy? Is it just a couple systems? Like how far apart are things in the Firefly universe?
It is a singular solar system that was discovered within traveling range of Earth, or Earth that was, as they refer to it several times throughout the movie and show. It is a solar system with hundreds of planets. Dozens of planets and hundreds of moons, as it's phrased at the beginning, that allow them to terraform them and make it so that there's a bunch of civilization that's all quite close together. It's like the Expanse size.
Really?
But with more planets and more moons.
Okay.
One star.
Because they, obviously there's no talk in this show of any kind of hyperdrive or subspace or any of that kind of stuff. It's all, they never get into time dilation or any of those other sci-fi tropes.
There's some sort of little burst to it.
Yeah, they go fast,
I don't know exactly
obviously.
what it is. There's definitely got to be some inertial dampeners, especially as we'll see later in the movie.
Yeah. So we're back to, they really gave Book, an important but very small role in this movie.
Yeah, but very memorable. It's one of the things that I distinctly remembered was the wise man who gets it.
Yeah, the kid.
When I was coming back to it.
Yeah, he's literally in two scenes. The one previously. Man, I wondered if the burning swing right there, if that was just his like, all right, we'll do the Terminator 2.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't think about that.
The swing on fire is a very iconic shot in the opening of Terminator 2. There's something about a children's playground on fire that's just a very visceral image.
Yeah, very evocative. This, I didn't realize how controversial it was for people to kill him. He was such a beloved character. We never got his full backstory.
Yeah.
There's an entire episode of the show where they're like intercepted by the Alliance, and the ending, it's like the second episode, I think, actually. Or third. But the ending, the resolution is literally that he finally gives them some sort of command code. And they're like, well, you're free to go. Have fun. Bye.
Yeah. Well, there's that, and then there's the, there was obviously a lot of episodes where they nodded to his past, but then the very, was it the last episode or second to last episode with the bounty hunter?
Last episode. Okay. Objects in Space. Early.
Yeah, where he knocks him out, and he's like, how could you do that to a shepherd? He just looks at him, it's like, that ain't no shepherd. Just the way that he says it, where he just knows.
They there's a comic that explains his backstory that's decently satisfying, but his whole thing is that he was an operative.
Yeah. I mean, that's-
Just like Age 4.
yeah.
And that he became disillusioned for
Did
some reason or another, and he had a whole bunch of secrets and things.
did Whedon write any of the comics and or books, or was involved in those that continued the story?
Yes, in fact, he's very involved in those kinds of things, or he was. For those of you who don't know, Joss Whedon has gotten himself into some trouble due to behaviors on set that make it sound very predatory and toxic. How many of them are true and how many of them are overblown, we don't know, but it sounds like, at the very least, he is not the greatest guy in the world, and he is yet to make a career resurgence. But the stuff that had comic books that were based around it, such as Firefly and Buffy and things like that, he has been distinctly hands-on.
Yeah, because I know that he wrote a lot of, like basically Buffy season 8, right? Like in comics. And I think
And
Angel had a whole nother season in comics.
well, Angel was canceled on a cliffhanger, and he finished it on that. But yeah, there's a chance that he's some sort of pervert when it comes to things, because he made Buffy bisexual, gave her like a girlfriend, and got really weird with it, really graphic.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry to cut you off.
yes.
Scene. So this is the first. I mean, not the first, but like just this. Yeah, this is one of the best. I alluded to this earlier in the film, but I love these lines. I'm not going to live there. There's no place for me.
There's no place for me there.
It's so self. How often does the villain call himself a monster? But not in like some kind of people think I'm a monster, people call me a monster, some kind of, or justifying it. No, this guy, he absolutely believes what he's saying. Like there's no pretense, there's no acting or theatrics from him. He's so straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he is in this a fatalist.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
He is a faithful fatalist. He does not believe there is any place for him in the new world, but his job is to set that world up as good as possible.
Yeah. I also
almost like Moses or something.
Yeah. This whole sequence too of just the idea that what would Mal's, and this is where like kind of the harsher side of Mal coming out here, of like where he's prepared to kind of really do a questionable thing here in order to get his crew through. I mean, thinking about stringing up bodies of people that they knew, like, like turn our home into an abomination. It's just,
This always felt very Mass Effect to me, this moment.
Yeah.
Like this is something where you would have like a big choice in Mass Effect, and you have all the characters gathered around, and they're given their opinions on it, and there's a fight, and you know that no matter what happens, you're not gonna satisfy everybody.
Yeah. The way he walks up, just shoots this guy, and yeah. Again, this is where I think, because I think in a lesser written film and a lesser acted role, I think this would seem like some weird out of character turn where you're all of a sudden wanting to make your main guy act in a totally weird way just for a moment. But this is, and granted, much more so if you've watched the show, but he does it. I don't know. Yeah. I love it.
One of the things here, you can tell when they're using miniature work, and it looks really good. Like you can tell, but it still looks really good. Like, I love good miniature work, and this has really good miniature work on it. This also does something that it broke the rule of Firefly, because one of Firefly's rules was that the ship is not armed. It is not a battleship. Yep. It is not a combat ship. It's a frigate. It's a cargo ship.
Yeah, there's no guns on this ship. And this is also not a universe with shields or anything like that either.
Nope.
Yeah. The TV show never really had any space combat sequences. I mean, they definitely had some chases, and they had some action in space as far as like running and booby traps, that kind of stuff. But never really, it wasn't a space combat show ever.
Yeah. Which I get. You don't always want to do that.
this is such
Terrifying.
such a effective sequence from an audio design point of view.
Mm-hmm.
The music is great. The reaction. I mean, all the characters are here on the bridge together.
Marina Bacardin tells a story about this scene where apparently, they're all like, "Oh, we've got to get in for this really, really tough scene, and it's going to be a little dark and all this stuff." And apparently, Nathan Fillion chose that moment to make a really hilariously funny comment, and everybody's busting up, and they're 2 seconds away from saying action,
Nice.
and they all have to like straighten up, and it became a very difficult scene to film to get the reactions proper.
I have heard he's a little bit of a prankster on set.
Yeah.
This is
But yeah.
Well, there's something about no dialogue. You don't need dialogue here. You just let the audience absorb this purely through sound and visual without any dialogue.
It has that in space, no one can hear you scream type of feel to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and just kind of people letting their breath out. The music shifts a little bit. That's all you need.
Yeah.
And I mean, the contrast of this blue, luscious world in the background almost the entire time is also very effective.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way.
Define disappeared.
Like, I love that you just see him cracking throughout this whole thing. This is a man who is infinitely confident in his skills as an operative. And he meets his match, not in the form of some, great martial enemy. He's getting frustrated by a cowboy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he hasn't.
Love that.
Well, and because again, Mal he doesn't fit any normal like mold of, somebody who's just a straight up selfish, like a kind of a selfish coward who's motivated by money. He's also, not like somebody who follows any kind of conventional set of thinking when it comes to his strategic decisions. He's kind of all over the place. He's unpredictable in ways that would just frustrate people who operated from a very trained, ingrained way of thinking.
Yeah, he is the ultimate, like, chaotic, neutral type of character for my fellow D&D friends who know alignment charts.
Yeah,
like he is. Yeah, I don't know. There's just something very Han Solo to him.
Oh yeah,
I love this whole sequence. It's so creepy.
I do take issue with Zoe.
eeriness.
I do take issue with Zoe having a scope on her shotgun, though. A little weird.
Well,
I mean, she doesn't use
maybe
it.
she uses
Slugs. You still
Thank
wouldn't need a scope. I mean, it is a cool prop. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I love that. Also, that's a Winchester Model 92.
Oh yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah, it's referred to as the mare's leg, because it's shortened. Normally they have a longer barrel. And yeah, she's got a scope on it for some reason.
There's something. I love that Jane's got like literally just a massive duffel of mags.
Right.
This whole world, though. I mean, the soft oversaturation. Just the concrete. Sterileness of this whole place. But with the I almost called them zombies, but just the corpses, man.
Mm-hmm.
It just and the idea of just losing the will to live, that there is something like in human beings that kind of drives us to keep trying, like basically like keeps us moving, keeps our legs moving, right? It doesn't just lay down and die. It's I don't know. It's interesting idea that you could somehow turn that off at the most fundamental level for a human being. That is kind of freaky.
Yeah. And it's almost like she can hear them, which is strange. Like I don't know if it's just a psychotic break or if she has like.
Yeah, because they're just dead. There's not like some kind of. I think it's just the way to kind of, and they're doing
Maybe
this.
it's that she would be expecting to hear them.
Maybe. I do feel like that was
Which,
one too many spins, by the way, around little tiny director nitpick that we're doing the whole spin around the characters while we do dialogue. It's very Michael Bay-esque, and they would like 4 or 5 revolutions there during that
yeah,
sequence.
that's true.
That's a total nitpick,
Um,
but anyways,
Yeah. Please God make me a stone is a reference to the book of Job.
uh,
And,
this
search and rescue.
this sequence though, you mentioned Sarah Paulson, this little role she got. This was such an effective performance that she gave here in this upcoming like transmission that they see the replay of here. Again, her delivery, the sound design, just the imagination going to work on what happens as she goes off, as she, fails to kill herself in time. It is so effective.
Yeah.
The first time I saw this, I literally got like literal, like body shivers at like, ha ha ha.
Mm-hmm.
When it got to the end of the sequence. Very good.
Yeah. So this here's Sarah Paulson, which again, she got a lot bigger after this. Not specifically because of this movie, of course, but she right around the same time she got onto the show Deadwood, I think it was, and then she moved on to like Studio 60, and then she started popping up in a whole bunch of little movies. I didn't see any of them particularly myself, but she was on 12 Years a Slave with Chiwetel Ejiofor. I remember she got like a lot of recognition for that. She was one of Ocean's 8 in the female-led reboot of Ocean's 11. But yeah, she's known for some pretty big stuff, mostly TV cable shows and things like that.
I also find this just a plausible thing that a government in this fictional universe would absolutely try. The idea of like, why don't we, especially after you've had some wars and rebellions, like
I was gonna say, think about the context of the unification war that we've gone over a few times.
Also, I feel like they get the translucence of the hologram just right. When like, in that shot that we just had where you could still see Walsh like right through her, and it was like just a really good balance of, I don't know, it's just technically speaking, I think they really got the I think a lot of holograms look kind of janky. Like they're trying to make sure it's a hologram, so they make it look bad when no actual, hologram would ever look that way. Oh my gosh, yeah, right here though. Just and they let the sound keep playing here for just long enough to really get the point across.
Yeah, it's the sound that does it.
Yeah.
Imagine being in that sound recording booth.
Oh man.
It's okay, keep screaming.
Well, and the idea too that's a moment where like the audience's imagination, when you do that right, is more powerful than any image you could give them at that point.
That's something my dad always brought up when it came to movie and filmmaking. Oh, hello, kitty.
Yeah, getting back to the idea of like, some kind of a drug that would just make a population. I mean, what the operative is fighting for, because human beings will always fundamentally reject a perfectly peaceful society. Like because you'll always have outliers. The only way you could ever have a system like that would be either with just freakishly overkill oppression or some kind of a literal transformation of like basic human psyche in a way, and but people who keep trying to make it happen, trying to make systems and societies, form in a way that just run contrary to every piece of evidence that's ever come about, about how human beings work. And it's something that I'm surprised doesn't get explored more in sci-fi, because as technology improved and medical technology especially improved, I have no doubt that would be. I'm sure people have thought about that in their real life now.
I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there that the entire antidepressant and anxiety epidemic, that you could say the mental health epidemic that people have referenced, is part of that. That they're they're creating a society in which people are addicted to things which give them anxiety and depression, and then they seek medication for it, and maybe that medication makes them more susceptible and easier to control. It's and it comes from stuff like this. And there's that science fiction, what's it called, Brave New World? Was it Brave New World? Or it's like a Bradbury, I think, like a Ray Bradbury
I think
story
so.
that's about people who take drugs and
yeah. That's
Yeah.
well, you're mixing up to an author in a movie, Alexis but he wrote Brave New World, and yeah, there's the the kind of the juxtaposition of the Orwellian 1984 of intense oppression versus there's like basically two ways to make a society do that. You either drug them or you oppress them. There's like the only two ways to do it.
I was also thinking about Equilibrium.
Oh yeah. No, the movie where there's supposedly no emotions yet everybody's very emotional. that I mean, we kind of glossed over also one of the more iconic Firefly lines of I aim to misbehave.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
was that in Firefly or was it only in this?
I feel like that was said in Firefly, but I mean I could be wrong. I'm not willing to because it all kind of blends together. But it's one of those iconic Malcolm Reynolds lines.
Yeah, it's on shirts.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah. I've got like a poster that's got like a bunch of the famous quotes from the show and film, and that's like the center one.
Yeah.
Of course, a lot of those comes from the episode Mighty Fine Shindig with the oh gosh, no, actually the line I was thinking of did not come from that that episode, but the I swear by my pretty blue bonnet I will end you.
yes.
Some good lines. Again,
This-
go watch the show. If you
this-
haven't seen the show, it's good. Go ahead.
This entire thing is so good. Everything that happens here, because it might not make sense at first, and then once you realize what they're doing, it's like, oh, that's really clever. Because I didn't see it coming. Also, I like the lack of sound effects.
Yeah, very muffled, which is cool.
Not a lot of science fiction does that.
Well, letting the music be the loudest thing. So this is actually one of the best like combat sequences in any sci-fi show. I mean, it's a one-off, but it's pretty good.
I agree. It is quite excellent. I really like it, and I also I didn't really understand what was going on because you're not supposed to. The first time I saw it, I'm just like, what the heck is happening? And they're like, oh my. But again, like, you get the operative, and you see that his confidence is back. Like, we've got him, and there he is.
He's not even.
And you get some good ship designs.
Yeah, not even changing course. the ship's coming out of the cloud. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. And they've previously established that cloud, it causes issues with sensors, so they wouldn't be able to see him coming.
Somebody fucking
so it closes.
Sorry, I'm just he does. It's like the one time he raises his voice.
Exactly. I love how they just wear this man down over the course of this movie. From I am the greatest to what in the name of God is going on.
I am a leaf on the wind.
Watch how I soar.
Although this is definitely an example where there's absolutely inertial dampers, because there's no way you would do this fight and not have people passing out, as The Expanse showed very well.
Mm-hmm. Passing out or being splattered on the inside of their walls.
You're right there. Oh gosh,
Which The Expanse book did very well.
It did.
Apollyon's Gate.
Yeah. I'd love that too. Just the idea of like kind of revisiting the same line, but with a very different tone of voice. I mean, Alan Tudyk, he's so great at that. Of just, it's okay, I'm a leaf on the wind. Oh, it's just great.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
There was a thing that was a reference to something. The leaf on the wind line. It was a reference to something. Um,
I love that
that's
the Reavers are still in the middle of all this, actually still trying to just chase the Serenity.
yeah.
Like all this craziness
like,
is happening, around them.
Yeah, I love that scene of the ship being skewered. This is the first time that I saw that kind of uh almost like real camera work and the punch-in zooms, which some people really hate it, like Corridor Crew, who we both like. They hate that type of animation with like, why do we need realistic looking zoom punch-in shots
See, I
in
like it.
space? I love it.
That's
But
one of the things
they
I like.
did it before Battlestar Galactica.
I was just about to bring that up. I think Battlestar, the way I described it when I was watching Battlestar was, it's like the cameraman is a real cameraman just chilling out in space with his camcorder, like recording the real events. Could it be overused? Of course it could, but still, I liked it.
Alan Tudyk stated that I'm a Leaf on the Wind was influenced by the quote from Kyle MacLachlan's Paul Atreides in the 1984 Dune, I will bend like a reed in the wind.
Ah, that's good. Oh, that's like
Yeah.
bring up Dune, and at the time of recording, David Lynch has just passed away.
Yeah, like 2 days ago, 3 days
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
Mhm. Good stuff.
Yeah,
Well,
this
not stuff, but man, life.
this is like one of those things coming up where, I mean, when Book passed and then what's about to happen is definitely one of those things
Mhm.
where so much more impactful if you've seen the show.
Yeah.
I mean,
I liked Jane being the one to like check everybody and make sure they're good. You know, he has that service nature. He's very much a soldier, in my opinion. You're seeing the G forces. People are kind of passing out. I like how the panel that Wash uses here moves a little bit. There's just kind of this jankiness to it.
Yeah.
Funny story. I got a friend of mine in college, Abigail. I wonder how she's doing these days. Into Firefly, and she was watching Serenity, and she was really anxious. I was just like, "Does anybody die?" And I told her, "Yeah." And I actually told her it was Mal and River.
You really?
Just to screw with her.
Oh,
yeah.
that's so mean.
So when this scene came along, she paused and she ran at me because we were living in Israel at the time. We were just a few doors down from one another. I'm in the common area, and I know that she's going to get to it within the next 2 hours, right? She comes running at me like, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
And I ran away, and she still tackled me to the ground. Like, literally knocked me to the ground and was like, you lied to me.
Yeah. It's genuinely sad that the way the lighting changes here, and it's brutal. Because I mean, as much as I loved Book, this was just rough.
This is his triumphant moment too. And it's just
Zoe's reaction, oh my gosh. I also, though, this is where I do think that Whedon has a sadistic streak inside of him, I think.
Oh, he does, in more than just one way, if you listen to his detractors. But I kind of like how his death wasn't drawn out either. Like, it was quick. He was stabbed, and he was dead.
Yeah.
Which is tragic in its own way. But, yeah.
It also, though, I mean, it's. I will say this: as much as I'm like, I like Walsh, and I don't like that he died on an emotional level because I like the actor and I like the character and all these things. It is effectively used because it does provide a very realistic, drive to the way that Zoe behaves. The one thing that would break her very steely like her professionalism, maybe that's the way of putting it.
Yes, like this stops being just a mission, and this is the mission that has now defined her. This is the mission that has now changed her life.
Yeah.
And you get this. Yeah.
It's this is
fatalism.
Yeah, and the fact that we even had time to to even really tell them what happened, right? I kind of, I'm a fan of attractive women, but the fact that they kept Enora like in a belly dancer costume was a little bit weird here.
I mean, She did kind of have to rush. She might not have any other clothes.
True, but I don't know. It was just, yeah.
No, but I actually completely agree with you because it's one of the reasons why I never really cared for Marina Bacardin, because she was always the sexy one. And she was so sexualized in everything. She was always taking her clothes off and stuff. And so it's almost like I knew that if Marina Bacardin was going to be in it, it was going to be one of those things where the primary audience is teenage boys who watch porn.
Yeah.
And which is not actually the case. That was like teenage, early 20s Zach talking. But I still have a little bit of that, like, you annoyed the crap out of me on Stargate SG-1, and I just don't really like you.
Yeah, she's been in some genuinely good, like she was the show Homeland. She had a role in the first 2 seasons of that. And that was a very grown up show in a way. But anyways, yeah, I don't hate her. I don't love her. I think that she's just a weak part of this film.
Most people will know her from the Deadpool movies. She's his girlfriend, Vanessa. You have a great line there that we missed from Jane, where Zoe is showing her complete fatalism, and she's just like, "Do you really think any of us are getting through this?" And he's like, "Well, I might."
Yeah. So coming up here is a line that my family, it's become part of the lexicon of my wife and I.
Yeah.
Good with the sword, Mal. Just though it's delivered in such a strange way by this like sex doll.
Yeah. But this is also one of those things that I kind of like.
Oh, I like it.
They specify the sword thing, and it's almost like the operative, in his arrogance, is his own defeat. Several times. Like, he didn't predict the Reavers.
Yeah.
He stabbed him with a sword instead of seeing to it in a more practical manner. And then he relies overly on his little nerve pinch thing. His vanity and arrogance is his consistent downfall throughout this movie.
He's
I kind of love that.
Yeah. Well, because that's also that happens in real life all the time. Oh man, picked a heck of a time for her to go help us on this. What do you think of Honora's like crossbow thing here? Or like,
I was going to bring that up. I kind of hate sci-fi bow stuff
because it reminds me of what was in Rogue One, the weapon that Donnie Yen's character had. It was very similar idea.
Well, his was more of like he didn't have to draw it back. It was bow shaped. His I was okay with. It was a heavy cannon of sorts.
Ah, okay.
I'm even okay with a Wookiee bowcaster. But straight up like sci-fi bows where they like pull back a string and it fires. It's used very heavily in the Clone Wars and the sequel to the Clone Wars, Bad Batch series by the character Omega. She says Omega because she's got a New Zealand accent. I don't care for it. I don't like the trope.
Yeah,
I like Hawkeye because his makes some sense.
Yeah, well, there is versatility in it.
Versatility.
But yeah, it's up there with why you would ever use a pump action shotgun in a really advanced situation, because it just makes no sense at all. Although
or a lever action.
This is a little convenient, but it also works. The fact that he
does.
Because she wouldn't, he wouldn't have had time to like program like some kind of recognition protocol into, it was just a give this message. So, yeah, it's okay.
I never thought twice about it. I think that it works quite well.
Oh yeah. It's a good way to give him a reason to find him in the place that he somehow missed. Because if he was down here and they established, they would have missed this, well, how else would you explain that he would suddenly be here to confront Mal?
Mm-hmm. Big generator.
This whole room, just the random chains everywhere. Hard to get to.
Like, I like the little set dressing fact that they did put in something where you can tell that there's supposed to be a retractable bridge. Like there's a lock on the side of that railing. Yeah, I don't know. I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's a cool design. I always felt I
You
genuinely just like
feel-
feel for Zoe here.
This gun that he's using is completely made up. Not that one. That one is actually a reference very much to one of the Boba Fett's gun from Return of the Jedi. But,
Oh man, I'm sorry. I just my back just
Yeah.
hurt.
right?
Shot me
it
in the
did
back.
seem it.
Like the first time that this guy's. Yeah, I haven't made you angry. Just again, there's this whole. There's still character happening here. You know that they
Mhm.
both consider. You know. Who they consider the innocent to be.
Yeah.
And even though he's still cold and calculating, his posture has changed. He's leaning forward a little more. His head is down. He's kind of just glaring a little more. And
It's a little bit more animalistic.
yeah, he's still him. He's not a different person. But like you said, they've really pushed him to kind of the breaking point. And it's
He's a
it's
very
awesome.
angry man now.
Yes, he's angry, but he's still the same man who's angry.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Um.
Ow. Oh, man.
Oh,
Mal
yeah.
would just be sore for weeks after this day.
Right. Just wait till the adrenaline wears off, buddy.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a bad time.
Yep.
We totally glossed over the really excellent moment of Kaylee and Simon finally confessing their feelings to one another,
Yep.
which was just necessary for anybody who watched the show.
It's Metagel.
Like if this was,
Sorry.
yeah, the metagel, it's what it is. The very common thing around this time in science fiction was some sort of magic foam or gel based very much on the real life expanding foam.
Well, it makes sense for sure. You would get into a wound and get penetration with some medicine. I mean, I think of it mostly from Halo, but yeah, it's been used in a lot of sci-fi for sure.
Yep, because it does make some sense.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote something with one of those in it where it's supposed to be like a legendary product, and everybody's like, they already have that in real life, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is something that actually becomes your cells and forms new blood vessels quickly. It's revolutionary.
Yeah. Haley, what's it see? I forget. Yeah, I'd say they all take a hit here at some point, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Nobody gets out of this scot-free.
Yeah. I do appreciate.
Kaylee's
Go ahead.
to the neck always reminded me of Jumanji.
Ah.
When that flower shoots Kirsten Dunst in the neck with the little spikes.
I was going to say, I do appreciate in the fight with Mal that at least there are railings. It does help,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, the door malfunctioned. That is just... It's a trope, but it's also fun.
Yeah. I just want to watch it,
I know.
I love seeing these characters. They're all worn out. The fight didn't take very long, but fighting takes it out of you quick.
Oh, yeah. There's a reason why boxers and MMA guys, look exhausted after 2 or 3 minutes, because you are exhausted after 2 or 3 minutes. And gunfights do not last as long as movies would have you think. Usually they are over quick.
Very.
Oh, this is just like the way this is shot, and just standing up, and it makes sense that this would be the thing that would snap River out of it.
Yeah. It's just... Apparently this was the hardest scene to film in the thing because the two were like really into the scene. They were doing really well. They had good chemistry. And the result is that she was trying too hard.
Really?
Yeah, apparently the two of them had a very difficult time filming this scene and getting the dialogue out because they were having very emotional reactions. They were almost acting too well. Because that can happen.
Yeah.
Where the reactions are too genuine, because people's actual reactions in situations of stress are nutso sometimes.
Yeah.
And they're not logical and they don't make much sense.
Well, this is also, I think, an example too where the actor who plays Simon here, what is his name again? Why my brain not working?
Sean something.
Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't get more, because I really think that he's objectively like a very solid actor.
He is pretty good. He's done some stuff. He did a lot of voices. I remember in they had a number of DC movies that were
Yeah, you're right. He was
he
in
was
some of those.
Nightwing
Yeah.
through all of those. But yeah, he didn't have a huge career. He was never like a cast member on another show. He just like did occasional things here and there, mostly sat it out. I remember seeing an interview with him where they were talking about how um he had trouble getting parts because there were too many other actors who looked just like him.
He does have a
Um,
fairly generic face. I don't mean that in a mean way,
well,
but
it's not just that. There's a distinct series of actors, such as Matt Bomer,
yeah.
and Brandon Routh. They look like they could be brothers.
Yeah.
Like they all look alike in one way or another. And there's even another one. I just can't remember. But he has almost too generic a face.
So, what do you think?
Yeah.
It's funny. We watched Dune last year, and the your main character gets stabbed, and it barely slows them down.
It's not the biggest sin in the world. Adrenaline does crazy things.
If it was a very strategically bad placement of the sword, I mean, you could definitely keep moving for a while. But so here you go. Go ahead and God in the machine. Oh man,
yeah,
it is a well acted sequence. You know, the close ups to Nathan Fillion and just kind of the throat elbow.
No, it is the biggest sin in this movie.
Oh
like,
no,
this line right here. Like the double dislocation of the shoulders mixed with the throat punch. Brutal.
Yeah, that is like we're done fighting now.
Horrible, but yeah, a piece of shrapnel toward that nose cast in my first tour. I had it moved. Like, what the hell? Like, they just throw that in there. Like, it takes this movie down from something that I believe this would be perfect for me. I'm the target audience. It is made for me. And that just, like, it doesn't ruin it, but it is close. For me. Like,
yeah. Well, it is, yeah. It's one of those things that I'm going to show you a world without sin.
Yeah.
I want to just watch this because this is a combination of I just enjoy the actors and it's a good looking sequence. I mean, there's so much to like about it, but yeah, from a writing point of view, it is atrocious. It is the definition of I need a way out.
It's like
yeah, I need a way out of what I wrote myself into here. I love the detail too I've always liked the detail of Malcolm's one eye where all the the red in it from like the broken. The guy took some hits. I can imagine that these guys getting their makeup. They had a good time. They made me think of the behind the scenes of the Uruk-hai in Lord of the Rings. That they like the stunt guys just had a really good time playing them with their makeup job.
Maybe.
I feel like these Reavers probably had fun.
This nice little. This is a very hard sequence to film for a $65 million movie. That's also a big sci-fi. This is an expensive scene. Also, they specifically designed moves for her because she was such a flexible dancer. That was like her big strength, was her flexibility. That they wanted fight moves that would work for the scene and the sequence, but that nobody else could do. A normal human could not move like that.
Well, because the vast majority of her action is her. Like right? They didn't use a stunt double heavily with her.
There were very few stunt doubles used in this movie in general. The cast wanted to do a whole bunch of stunts. He wanted to use shots where you would have to see their faces in order to make it feel more real.
There's the trailer shot right here.
Oh yeah, I know so many people who just like went gaga over this scene, and I get it. It's a good scene.
It's a good silhouette. The troops coming, but yeah, right there, the close up on Mal's face with his eye, it always stood out to me in a good way. Like, yeah, he needs to look like he took a few big hits to the face.
Oh, I think that they did a great job. There's that scene. One of the funniest things I read about this movie, there's that scene where he falls to the ground after the operative hits him, where they essentially he was doing that scene over and over and over again, and he would actually fall to the point of where somebody's like, man, the makeup looks really good. It wasn't makeup. He had bruised himself and was swelling on the side of his face.
Oh, goodness.
And they used it in this scene.
Okay.
Like, his face is actually slightly swollen on the left-hand side.
Yeah, you can... Yeah, it looks good.
That's not makeup.
Yeah. And then we get a little...
This is quite a jump. Like, I feel like there needed to be a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right here. It's not so much that I think it detracts from the film. It's just... It's another one of those editing things where I'm just like, I feel like there should have been another scene of, like, all of them sitting down in that hallway and, like, slumping together.
Yeah, because we immediately jumped to one. They're mostly healed up. We have quite a time jump. They're here on the planet still. Like, it's hard to get a handle on how much time has supposedly gone by all of a sudden, because from their faces it looks like it's been days.
Yeah,
and then
supposed to have been days.
Yeah, and then the idea too that they the repairs here, they literally snapped an engine off of one side of this ship. I mean, it was just a couple of them, makeshift repairs.
Mm-hmm.
This
and
would
you
take...
notice that, like, she's in the window.
Yeah.
Like, this is months. This is a months long time lapse.
And that's where I feel like the operative, just basically, after a battle like that, how would he have kept, people who could overrule him at bay, I guess, so to speak, as far as him just deciding to let them go?
Well, that's his power, though.
Yeah,
that is distinctly his power. He is the guy who erases the dirty secrets. The Alliance just got their butts kicked by the Reavers.
that tiny... Right. The river, peeking her head out through the hatch. It's like weird and kind of like, really? You're going to just like sit there and watch your brother go at it? But it's also funny.
It's for her.
Yeah.
And you have the operative back. I love this whole sequence.
Yeah.
I love all of this because it's such a turn, but it makes sense with his character.
Well, I think that
a world without sin.
Yeah. I think if they had developed Book a little bit better earlier too, I not that they, it doesn't, it would just help this. This isn't bad at all. But I think too, if it's almost like you could see this guy going down a similar path to what other operatives have also, illustrated by
Interesting that you say that.
All right.
Interesting that you say that, because part of the intention of this character in this scene in this movie is that, in theory, should it have been enough of a success, it could have led to a revival of the series. But alas, they have killed off so many characters.
Yeah.
Who would replace Shepherd Book? One of their diversity characters who's also faithful and has this dark past and power.
You replace him with another one.
How would they possibly replace him? You replace him with another one.
Yep.
Slightly different backstory. This was supposed to be the season 2 finale and season 3 premiere of the show. This storyline, without killing Wash and probably Book.
Yeah.
But this was all in the tapestry, and then the next part was going to be like the beginning of a new rebellion, a new war against the Alliance.
The sequence coming up here where he's talking in the cockpit to River, it's on one hand, it's very cheesy writing here at the very end, and I freaking love it.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I love it. I think that it's just what it needs, because this is a little bit cheesy.
Well, but it's also like captains, and this is where too, like, I will, save this for other podcasts with shows that don't do this or continuations of beloved things that don't do this. The ship is a character. Mal loves this ship. The ship is a part of what, makes him feel alive. And that kind of sentimental attachment to your ship is 100% realistic. It has been for all of recorded history, and I have no doubt whatsoever if the human race continues into the space that we will continue to have those kind of feelings. And again, Nathan Fillion's
car guy, for goodness sake,
Oh yeah, and Nathan Fillion's delivery of it is just so good here.
There's something very earnest about it.
Oh yeah, and I love the idea of the river. Like I want to hear you say it. It's a nice end, and it's well shot. I love the lighting here. I love the way he frames the shot here.
Yeah.
And again, just like the dialogue here, it just enough of kind of a foreign bit of slang mixed in that just makes it feel alien but familiar. And again, I love Nathan Fillion so much. I really adore his vibe as an actor and just the way he plays this character.
No, I'm with you there. Apparently, this was originally going to take place in a different part of the ship, but it was actually Summer Glau's request that River be interested in flying, as she thought that it fit with her character.
That makes sense. And then, of course, you get the little, this cool shot, and then got to end on a joke, which is totally appropriate for this show.
I agree. I love that.
What was that?
I hate that.
You don't like that?
I don't like the what was that. I
really?
like the buffer panel coming off as that fits, but I think that should have been the end. I don't like the what was that. I think it's a little bit too on the nose.
I mean,
but minor complaint.
Yeah, I mean, if they hadn't done it, it still would have been a great ending. There definitely have been moments where Mal would say things like that, I guess, is why it doesn't bug me too much.
God, Amazon's auto-playing The Man in the Iron Mask. Save me, God. Yeah.
Okay, this is an odd little thing, but I kind of like the font choice in the credits. It's very blocky.
I don't know. It auto-played The Man in the Iron Mask.
See, and even I love that it auto-plays movies even when you own it versus renting it.
Right?
Yeah. See, I own this. I bought it through Apple, so I'm actually watching it on the Movies Anywhere because Apple's player hates my headphones.
That's weird.
And a gripe there, but anyways,
it would also explain why it seemed like I think that you were about 1 second to a half a second faster than me the whole movie.
Well, I'm sorry. I also did speak about a few things like right before they're about to happen because this is one of those movies that like I anticipate my favorite parts.
It was the reactions like, ooh, when he fell and hit his back. And then right when you were saying that, he fell and hit his back on my side.
Oh, funny. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, it's just weird sometimes.
Yeah. This is, I mean, how many failed TV shows get a movie like this? The short list, for sure. And
even successful TV shows that wanted to get movies didn't get them. Yeah. Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Enterprise, thankfully Voyager was going to have a larger presence in the movies, but after the lukewarm reception of Nemesis, they were like, nope.
Stargate
none
Atlantis.
of that now. Reboot time. Stargate Atlantis. They were going to have some like... They did, which did star Jewel State, Kaylee Fry. Yeah. I quote this movie so much, though.
Yeah.
I cannot harp on it enough that this movie is everything I love about sci-fi. And to an extent, a lot of the things I hate. Like, the misplaced corny one-liners in places, which I like corny one-liners for the most part, but I didn't think it was right for that ending. I hate that Deus Ex Machina so much. It just drives me crazy. I know that there's some purists out there when it comes to this movie, or this franchise, I should say, that hate a lot of the changes and retcons and things. I think that they're fine. They're not the greatest in the world or anything. It's not like it's perfect, but I think that this is a fantastic movie and a solid send-off for this whole show.
Well, it's for the little sins it has, and the one big writing sin, it gets the one thing that you cannot screw up, and that is characters. If you get your characters right, if you cast them correctly, you write their characters correctly, it will cover a multitude of sins. You can, I mean, you can have a weak story with amazing characters and it'll be a good movie. If you have an amazing story with weak characters, it's going to be a bad movie every time.
Yeah. And it's just I love that there's no like big actors in this movie. That it maintains itself as a small, like personal thing. They didn't bring in, and this is probably budgetary reasons. They didn't bring in some really, Oscar nominated, the actor, the operative's not played by Hugh Jackman.
Yeah. Well,
It's like,
yeah.
and of course Chidwell Ejiofor did go on to at least be nominated. Didn't he get the Oscar for
12 Years a Slave?
12 Years a Slave?
I think he got it. I don't remember. I mean, he's a very acclaimed actor.
If he didn't, he deserved it.
Yeah, I'm sure he got nominated. I don't remember if he won. I always got confused in that movie because Steve McQueen is the director, and it took me a minute to realize that was a totally different person than the classic actors. I'm like, wait a minute, Steve McQueen? What do you?
Yeah, there's another director, Steve McQueen. Apparently, there's a porn star named Steve McQueen. It's just a name that's out there, man.
Yeah. But I do think that it made this a better movie, but I do think it was part of why it didn't succeed as well at the box office. Because it is a movie where I think your reaction, when you saw it the first time, was a lot of people was like, oh, that was interesting, but it didn't stand out because these are characters, as much as you grow to love them. He had to write them. He couldn't treat them like they were fresh new characters. He had to, because I mean, I think Joss Whedon, rightfully so, knew that the established fans, which he owed more than relaunching the show, would have just wigged out, rightfully so, if he had changed massive parts of these characters for the sake of trying to relaunch something. And so as much as I'm appreciative of that, and I think it makes it a better film for these characters, I think it's partially what was held it back from getting more traction. But there was also, like, I know that there was, like, the marketing for it wasn't amazing, and
the marketing wasn't great for it. They didn't really tell people what to expect with it. There's all kinds of stuff that went wrong behind the scenes for this movie in terms of getting it out there and getting kind of word of mouth. There were even Firefly fans out there because the internet was still young-ish that didn't even know it was coming out. They didn't even realize that it was connected,
What do you think about this too? We often ask each other, how would we fix this movie? And I don't think I don't think this movie really needs fixing in any kind of major way.
I would Chekhov's gun the nerve cluster.
Yeah, it's an easy fix. But I was going to ask you, what do you think? Because I love the name Serenity for the ship. I don't think it's a great title for a film, especially not this film. I'm not sure what a good title would have been, but I think it would have helped if it had. Unless you, it's such an inside, unless you knew the show, you were like, what is that even, what? Because I mean, I know what the word Serenity means, but unless you're a fan of the show and that's the name of the ship, the title gives you no indication as to what this movie's going to be.
I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I think that it is the perfect title for the movie. For a couple specific reasons. One, thematically. Okay?
All right.
Serenity is being in space on the ship with your family, doing what you do well. Serenity is what Malcolm is experiencing and what he's fighting for. Serenity is what the operative thinks he's fighting for. Serenity is what they tried to force on the citizens of Miranda that created the Reapers. Serenity is the theme of this movie. So I get it, and I don't think it can be escaped. So I wouldn't change it at all. But I see where you're coming from, and
I'm thinking about it more from a
title.
Yeah, I don't think I'm thinking about it from a marketing point of view. You're not wrong. It does work, but again, you have to kind of know about the universe to get it. So it's like it's a movie
that's just it.
Good.
This movie was doomed. unless they really wanted to push this as something interesting, they show more of the fight scenes in the marketing. The marketing was wider. They have some of the quips that people can actually understand. They show this off as kind of a Guardians of the Galaxy-esque swashbuckling action adventure sci-fi that, you know, is going to be just a fun romp through space with these characters that you want to get to know. It would have been more successful, but that's not what they did.
Yeah.
If you wanted to take this movie in particular, the one that they actually made, and not make something entirely different, you have to keep the title of Serenity.
Yeah.
And the issue is not in the name. The issue is entirely in the marketing and the execution, because there is there's precedent for this. In particular, things like Inception. Okay, Inception isn't like. What does that even mean? Most people, even today, don't actually know what Inception means. They just know the movie, and they know the word because of the movie.
Yeah.
And so you're just like, ooh,
yeah,
it's a sci-fi thing. You know, Serenity could mean anything. Inception could mean anything. They went because they liked what the marketing showed them.
Yeah. Although I will say, Christopher Nolan, his name aside, Inception had one of the coolest trailers in, you know, a long time. It was a heck of a trailer.
Inception is one of the coolest movies of all time.
It is, but I just mean like that trailer and the music piece that was written for that trailer.
You mean that appeared in like every other trailer for the rest of the 2010s?
It was definitely overused, but dang, was it good at that moment.
It was indeed.
Anyways, good movie. I'm glad we got to do this. You know, this is one of those special films attached to a very special show, and you know, this kind of one of those moment touchstones in the genre. And I absolutely do think also this was peak Joss Whedon. I think that, you know, he had as a writer and as a character developer, I think that this was the best he ever did. And I've seen Dollhouse and it had its moments. And I mean,
I didn't care for Dollhouse.
Yeah, but Buffy and Angel definitely had their highs. I don't adore those shows as much as I know a lot of diehard fans do, but they're, you know, they're good and they definitely have moments. But I think that this was
really love. Yeah.
Good.
I love Angel. I did not care for Buffy. I didn't like her acting, so even though it had some amazing stuff on it, I couldn't watch it I never got my way all the way through the series. I watched like a best of the collection, essentially, because Sarah Michelle Gellar's acting bugged the crap out of me so much.
Yeah, see, and I never...
I absolutely loved Angel because I really liked David Boreanaz.
Yeah.
Even their absolutely abysmal third season.
I was going to say...
Actually, Gina, what's her face?
Yeah. I was going to say, I think with Buffy, because I never... She was never the reason why I enjoyed that show. It was the people around her that carried that show, in my opinion. I think that if you had let that show... If that show had not had the strong ensemble it had, it never would have worked. It never would have lasted because you did have, is it James Marsters?
Yeah, James
Spike.
Marster.
Yeah, I mean, and you had Allison Hannigan as Willow, and what was the Xander? I mean, you had these just fantastic supporting characters that were fun. And you emotionally became very... I mean, I remember so many moments... almost every moment I think of in that show that stands out to me. And I think I've seen all of Buffy twice. I'm pretty sure it's twice. And almost all of the stand-up moments for me that I just think of, none of them involve Buffy. Or if she's in them, that's not the reason why I like it. But yeah, Angel definitely had its moments. There's a... I
actually really liked Angel. Yeah. I know that it's cheesier. It has some weaker moments.
Yeah, I like Angel a lot also. I've heard there is a YouTuber is it, I think Mueller is what what he goes by. He works with Critical Drinker and a few other YouTubers. He has a whole thing about Wesley being to him like one of the best examples of a character developed over time in like the history of television. I heard him go off for like almost 20 minutes in a video one time where he was just explaining why Wesley was just one of the best written and like best character arced, that's not the right way to put it, but you know what I mean?
He has one of the greatest examples of character growth in a TV show.
Yeah. And it's, I would not disagree with that. He did a great job because, man, where he starts in Buffy and where he ends in Angel is so good. And just Alexis, what's the actor's name? He's actually married to Allison Hannigan.
Yes, Denisov.
Yes.
Which, for anybody who's watched How I Met Your Mother, Lily is who we're talking about with the character of Willow, and his he appears in that show as a recurring role. He's the
horny reporter.
Sandy Rivers or whatever his name is.
Yeah, he's always trying to get with Robin. He has the fake hair. Yeah. Anyways, he's also done some voice work in DC animated television. So, anyways, we should wrap this up. But just a fun universe. I think, like I said at the beginning of this, I'm sad we never got more of this universe and these characters. But I also am glad that it kind of exists almost like in the singularity now of amazingness in the past, and just kind of gets to
it gets to live with what it is instead of be slowly transformed into something else that it deserves better than to be.
So
Star Trek, Star Wars.
And I am thankful that the one thing that I am really thankful for is I do know that this show, for all of its for the lack of viewership that it got, that it is one of the big reasons that Nathan Fillion, his career continued to grow after this. And not that Castle is like some kind of, beacon of like the greatest television ever made, but I'm just so happy that he got to continue a successful career and we got more of him, because I think that without this show, I don't know where his career would have gone. So I'm thankful.
Even if one of his first acting jobs was in a Best Picture winning Steven Spielberg movie.
Oh yeah, in Private Ryan. Yep.
He was Private Ryan #1.
Yeah. Anyways, any final thoughts?
Good movie. $60 million budget, made $59 million. Real sad. This is something, it made its money back through home sales and merchandising, and is it helped shape the MCU as we know it with Joss Whedon. It's the reason that he got the Avengers. It's just such a good sci-fi. You do need some context in the background. I'm not going to sit there and claim that it's the most accessible movie in the world, but I love it. It's great, and I think it deserves all the love it can be given. And anybody who hasn't seen Firefly should, because this is just one of those moments where you have a single set of properties, the TV show and this movie, that just create a story, create characters. They're great. Well acted, well written. They all have arcs, and even if it's like Jane, where he has no arc, that is his arc. And it should be appreciated, it should be looked at, and it should be celebrated.
Yeah. I am very glad that the show.
Don't write Deus Ex Machinas.
Yeah. I'm very glad that the show gets it gets the legacy it deserves. It properly belongs on near or at the top of every list ever made about TV shows canceled too early. And love it also. Always happy to watch this movie again. Like I said, I just recently watched it completely separate from planning for the podcast, and when it came up on the podcast, like, yep, I will happily watch it again. So yeah.
Heck yeah.
Well, with that,
I'm gonna go watch Firefly.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
There's doors and corners, kid. If you don't clear the room, if you don't come in slow, that room will